This is lesson 3 of how to respond to anti-Zionist trolls, haters, and bots in the comments sections of your pro-Jewish and pro-Israel social media posts. If you're watching this on TikTok, I have a playlist called Jewish Activism. You'll find parts 1 and 2 in there. If you're watching this on Instagram, parts 1 and 2 are pinned to the top of my profile. Let's go. In part 1, we talked about a brief recap of what the anti-Zionist hate movement is, what doesn't work, responding to those type of comments, defending yourself, using facts, trying to explain how all the libelous claims of colonizer, apartheid, and genocide are not true, and instead to take the spotlight and shine it directly onto the libel hater or bot, throwing these libels at you, not engaging them, but for the audience of lurkers, the silent majority in the comments watching. That's episode 1. Episode 2, I took a literal example of a back and forth from one of my posts, and I showed you what they wrote, what my response was, why my response was what it was, the tactics I was doing, what I was resisting doing, taking the bait that they were trying to get me to do, and what I did instead. This time, I thought we would take a peek on some of my conversations with ChatGPT. I do recommend that you have an account, not necessarily with ChatGPT, but one of the LLMs, large language models. There is Claude, there is Gemini, that's the one by Google. There is Copilot, that's the one by Microsoft. I use ChatGPT. If you know from episode 2, I have a project. You can create projects, which are just like folders, basically. And they're useful because you can group a lot of conversations within them. You can start new conversations within them. And if you've given any big instructions at the start of the project, the LLM automatically knows them. You're not starting from scratch with each new conversation. So I literally have a group project in my ChatGPT called Libel Caller Outer. And in the beginning, when I was newer at this, that's all I used it for. Much simpler. I said, this person, what libel is this? Or, what is this comment? And ChatGPT would help me see, oh, that's colonizer libel, even if they didn't use the word colonizer. Oh, that's land theft libel. But as I've been spending more time viewing the movement against anti-Zionism stories in their Instagram, I've been learning more about how not to defend and instead to turn the gaze over. And so I converted that project I already had, Libel Caller Outer, from being a simple one that just identifies the libels and tactics and calls them out, to calling out the entire anti-Zionist hate movement, a strategy that helps me to keep the gaze on them for the lurkers in the comments. So I'm not just purely calling out libels, but strategies that these comments are doing. So let's go behind the scenes and see how I got the responses that I posted to the hater, troll, or bot in the second video. Let's literally take a peek behind the curtain at my discussions with ChatGPT about that to see how I worked with the AI to help get those good responses. You'll see the first thing I did was, like I said in the second video, I took a whole bunch of screenshots which I got from Movement Against Anti-Zionism stories. They're really sharing a lot of these on their stories. And I fed them into ChatGPT. And I said, this is all background and context and instruction on how to answer these libel comments smarter. Please take this input, process it, analyze it, and understand it, and use it to suggest better output to me when I check in with you for help. And it wrote back, great, this is super helpful context. I'll try and do that. And then it just repeated a lot of, it overanalyzes. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. Now we're looking at this first comment that I got from this person. And a lot of times I am not this blunt, and I'll just say, look at this comment, help me respond. I think it's this, I think it's that. But in this case, I guess I was really angry, and I just said, shine the gaze on that motherfucker. And it wrote back, here is a clean, surgical way to shine the gaze on them without engaging them, because what he's doing is textbook this libel, that libel, that libel. He's not arguing, whatever. Here's your response. And it gave me one. It gave me a second one that was a little tighter. And if I wanted, it gave me the even tightest one. And I wrote back, and I didn't like any of them. I said, no, there's no such thing as a libel stack. It used some jargon that nobody in the audience would know. Remember, our audience is the silent majority. they're not going to know what I'm talking about if I say libel stack. Always start like the first time with anti-Zionist hate movement. You could talk about how it harms Palestinians. You could, I don't know, do you need me to re-upload those images? This is just, you're not doing a good job. Okay, so I told her I got it wrong that time. By the way, I keep reminding ChatGPT that it's anti-Zionist, all one word, lowercase, no hyphens. Sometimes it spits it back out the wrong way. So just a note to yourself, when you copy paste, always, always, always check for that, because it's really important. Because if there is a hyphen, it looks like that they're attacking Zionism. They're not against Jews. They're just against the state of Israel. And when we use that same hyphen, we're buying along to that. But remember, anti-Zionist isn't with a hyphen. It's not just targeting Zionism. In the same way that anti-Semitism is no longer spelled with a hyphen, it's all one word, anti-Semitism, and it's just basically a fancy fakakta word that means Jew hate. It's not against Semitism, it's against Jews. Same thing with anti-Zionism. So you'll need to check for that. Sometimes your large language model will give you the wrong one with a hyphen, and you just fix that. So continuing on. Chat said, thank you for the correction. Here's the right structure, blah, blah, blah. No jargon, no libel stack, no insider language. This needs to be instantly legible for the silent majority watching. Okay, so it gave me a first one. And then it gave me an even tighter one if I wanted maximum clarity. And it gave me that one there. You can see it, and then it gave me an ultra minimal, super tight one. But I didn't like these either. So I said, no, we're not there yet. I'm going to upload some more positive examples right here, okay? All those other screenshots I gave it was a long thread from a big, maybe the brainchild of the movement against anti-Zionism, Adam Louis Klein. And it's a great post where a Palestinian American activist put in a long libel vomit sort of blog post, which was just all these libels against Israel and his breakdown about why each thing was a libel. It's basically just really advanced, intense training for the AI. So I wasn't satisfied with any of their answers. That's why I put in that long post to train them. And it said, oh, now that I've got this, I really can help you out, okay? And so again, it relearned that always begin by pointing out that it's a hate movement, never meet a single claim, expose the method, not the content, widen the lane. Okay, using that exact model, and again, it gave me a couple different versions. And finally, it got me one that I liked. And here it is, I used it, okay? Then this person did write back a second time. And what did he write? Well, he copied my previous statement about how I wrote, this is how the anti-Zionist hate movement works. So he just had nothing original and ripped me off there and said, this is how Zionists work, okay? And he wrote what he wrote. You can, again, press pause to look at that or go watch the second video. Here's what I said to ChatGPT. Look at how, remember, this is text to speech, so there's errors. Look at how he responded, totally ripping off basically, I'm rubber, you're glue, and sticks to you, just trying to imitate me and imitate my style. We can't let him win. We are not talking to him. We are talking to people reading the comments. We are exposing him. So I do not want to answer him. However, I want to point out as if I'm speaking literally in a room with someone and going through on a blackboard explaining what this person is doing. This is a text-to-speech error. There is no pulp aligned move. That's not a thing. Just ignore that part. So it repeats the instructions. It understands that that's what I'm doing. It writes a response for me. It writes a reason why it's a good response. And it writes like a second version of it. And I didn't love it. So I wrote back, all right, I'm not saying no, but on the one hand, what is pulp? I finally asked it that. I don't know what that is. And second of all, I don't love how you responded with anti-Zionism is a hate movement. We already did that. And in fact, here he is mocking that. So that seems a little stale. Let's move past that. You might reframe it as one of the most predictable tells of the anti-Zionist hate movement is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just giving it an idea. You don't need to keep it. I think it says you don't need to keep it fresh, but I think what I said was you need to keep it fresh. Don't just repeat something you've already said. And so it tries again. And it repeats back what it thinks it's learning from me. Okay, it writes an answer. Then it explains why that answer might be a good one. And in fact, it was a good one. So I posted it. And then a little while longer, the troll hater bot posted for the third time. Okay, here's what they posted. And again, you can look in more detail in the second video in this tutorial. So I showed ChatGPT his third statement and I said, am I done? I've replied twice and now this would be my third and final reply. I mean, it doesn't have to be 3. I can keep going, but I don't want to just give him an audience. If he's beginning to repeat himself, I can just move on, because would it be easier if he was just escalating into libel vomit and I could call that out? But he's not doing that. He keeps trying to reframe it that I'm avoiding the subject, but I'm not going to let him reframe the conversation as me avoiding the subject. I'm just pointing out to the audience what he's doing. He thinks I'm talking to him, but I'm not. And so ChatGPT tells me, yes, you're done. But if you want to offer a final comment to lock the frame in for the audience, not for him, you absolutely can. So it writes me an optional comment, okay? And it explains why that comment is so the bomb. And it gives me another version, and then it gives me a really, really short version. And then it recaps, like, should you post it? Or, yes or no. It gives me both options. Anyway, I ended up posting it. Here's the version I posted. I can't remember what it is. I'm talking to one phone and reading it off a different device. But through the magic of editing and CapCut, you're seeing it together on the screen at the same time. But that's what I did. Because I've educated my ChatGPT and I've done that work beforehand, it kind of knows what we're all trying to do here. And then I screenshot the comment. I say, remember what we're trying to do? If it's the very, very first of the 3 comments, we want to name the anti-Zionist hate movement and, point out what they're doing, turn the gaze onto them. And then if the hater bot troll replies again, I work with chat again on, like, and I'll say, this is their second post. I think they did this. Do you think that? Do you have a different take on it? And it'll give me some answers, usually a couple different versions. And I'll either tell chat, you're going in the right direction, or I'll say, no, that's wrong. We just did that. It's going to look stupid. And then maybe in the end, I'll do a little tweak based on what it gave me. And that's how you do number 3. I don't know what we could do for number 4. Maybe we'll just kind of repeat what we did in the second video, and I'll screenshot another real-time example the next time I get a really good one where the hater goes back and forth with me 3 times. I hope this is helpful, and if you're just coming into the series here at number 3, you're really going to get a lot out of watching 1 and 2. Again, on TikTok, those are in a playlist called Jewish Activism, and on Instagram, they are pinned at the top of my profile. Thanks, everyone.